Hello, everybody. This is me, Amin,
And this Alex.
and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About. And in this episode, we're going to talk about something I think is going to concern a lot of people, especially in the future. It is the rollout of MyDigital, and more specifically, 5G in Malaysia. So 5G in Malaysia is still kind of like up in the air. I don't know what's going on. It was on, off, and then now on again through this thing called MyDigital. So we want to go into detail. 5G in Malaysia, what is the future? When can we Malaysians start getting 5G? And what is this thing called MyDigital? And what does it have to do with 5G deployment in the country? So Alex has been covering the story a lot, and he's been talking a lot about MyDigital and 5G. So I think Alex, you should introduce what is. Okay, let's talk about first what is MyDigital.
So MyDigital is an initiative by the government to basically transform Malaysia into a high-income nation through a number of action points to drive the digital economy. And there's a lot of things inside there. So the first one is how to digitalize the government sector, the public sector. That includes keeping more information up to the cloud, make sure everyone is digitally proficient. And also, second one is more on policies. How do we have regulation and policies in place to increase adoption of digital technologies and also, all that stuff, and how to make a conducive environment for startups. And of course, the most important part, which we're going to talk about today, is the infrastructure. So 5G is one of it. That's something that's very surprising. And another one will be also attracting more investments in data centers and also submarine cables, and that's also another thing that I want to talk about as well.
Okay, so if what I've been reading on in terms of your reporting, like the gist of it, 5G, MyDigital, the intent is good because it's like trying to create like a whole ecosystem where policies, infrastructure, private sector and talents are all taken into account to develop a more digital Malaysia. Like take Malaysia forward to become like a digital economy means we create more people who are proficient in digital skills like coding and things like that. We have the infrastructure like things like cloud solutions that are able to take up the massive data, and even our government will become digitalized in a way that maybe we don't need ICs anymore. Maybe we don't need physical cards anymore. So things like that. Yes, it's painting a very bright future, but I cannot help myself to think that okay, I've heard this before. And where have I heard this before? Well, think back to last year. In the 1980s or 1990s, I can't remember. A particular prime minister of Malaysia, started this plan, this 30-year plan, called Wawasan 2020. And last year was the day that this plan was supposed to graduate. And the plan started out with this vision to bring Malaysia from an agricultural to bring Malaysia from an agricultural country to a modern industrialized country. So back then it wasn't all digital, it was industrial. It was about manufacturing and becoming a manufacturing hub of automotive, of everything in the whole region. Look how that turned out now. Malaysia is not a automotive hub like how the Prime Minister back then, Tun Mahathir, had envisioned. We have Proton, but Proton now is 51% owned by a Chinese company. And you see Thailand and Indonesia now overtaking Malaysia when it comes to adoption of new technologies in automotive. In fact, there was a report on searchinfo.com that Malaysia is way behind Indonesia and Thailand when it comes to electric vehicle adoption. So that brings me to this, MyDigital, right? Electric vehicle and the technological skills required in creating an autonomous electric vehicle. The skills required is something that is laid out in the MyDigital plan. From talent to infrastructure to 5G, all that is required to create an autonomous electrical vehicle, right? And I don't feel that, I don't know. Again, government, please prove me wrong, but looking at the track record, I don't think this is something that is going to succeed, particularly because the way that it is going to be rolled out.
And not just that, the blueprint itself, right? It's like full of ambitions. Yeah, very nice ambitions, and very nice goals and all that stuff. But how do you achieve that? That's missing. How do you get there? Why is it proposed that way? Those things are missing. So it looks like, very nice. It looks like a very wonderful poster, but there's no substance to back it up.
It's like, okay, we're gonna go to Mars by 2030, right? This is a 10-year plan, right?
Yep.
So by 2030 we'll be in Mars. And then we're like, and we're gonna create the talent, the industry, and the infrastructure to allow us to go to Mars.
And they just walk off. Okay, you guys sort it out.
And then everybody's like, there are people like us who want to report on the news, but there are also people who are eager to like, okay, I want to contribute. I want to go to Mars. I want to develop the industry, the people, and the infra to go to Mars. Then they ask, how do I do it? And then the government was like, I don't know, you guys figure it out lah. This is my vision. Essentially, that is what it is right now. So the thing that we are specifically looking at is 5G. And why 5G? It's because 5G is going to be the backbone of everything that is required here. Like I go back to the autonomous vehicle, right? Without 5G, autonomous vehicle will not okay, I wouldn't say would not exist. It's going to be a challenge because vehicles need to talk to each other. If you remember 2 years ago, 2019, we have the 5G DP.
Demonstration
project. And one of the key demonstrations was autonomous driving vehicles.
Yep, that's right.
Because they said that 5G is the technology in the backbone infrastructure that will enable autonomous driving vehicles. Now we come back to 5G. So back then, 2019. Okay, maybe Alex, you can give us the history lesson on all of the multiple projects that have been saying the same thing and where we are now today.
Okay, so just to go back, how this whole 5G ambition started. So during the previous administration, the government was, they're seeing that, okay, 5G is something that we need to jump into. And we are supposed to be in the forefront in 5G for the Southeast Asian region.
For the region.
Yeah. We were actually trying to beat countries like Singapore, Thailand, and all that in terms of 5G. So the government launched a lot of initiatives, a lot of activities like the 5G demonstration projects. There's also a lot of public inquiry about the spectrum. There's also a 5G task force being formed to look into what is needed to get the ball rolling. And after all the demonstration projects, and I think in 2019, the government said, okay, yes, we are on track. We're going to kick off 5G services by the third quarter of 2020, which is last year. And then the change of government sometime in February. Everyone knows about that. It's already 1 year already. Yeah. And then the whole thing just paused. Nobody knows what's going on. I've asked multiple times under the new administration, what's going on 5G? They said, oh, hold on first. We're going to announce something. And then I think a couple months later, there's a news about the 700 megahertz spectrum that was supposed to be given. They were supposed to be auctioned out. Okay, but talking about spectrum, it was proposed by the previous administration that for 5G, right, what they have discovered is that it requires a huge investment, about 7 to 8 billion ringgit to roll out 5G networks. And based on their 5G task force, they realized that all the telcos, right, they can't afford that much of an investment up front to roll out 5G. And if you're going to continue the same route of giving each telco individual licenses and spectrum to roll out 5G, it's going to be half-baked. Because we've seen that in 3G. We've seen that in 4G. You get licenses, okay, I roll out 4G, okay, I just roll out enough. Okay, I think this is 4G and that's it. There's no proper fiber.
The telcos are going to roll out to where the people are just going to subscribe.
Yeah,
like
and also
the market centers and stuff like that.
Correct. And then, for example, a lot of things, like look at the current 4G networks. Not all telcos have voice over LTE. This is critical.
In 2021, yeah.
Yeah.
That's like the basic.
That's the basic, and it's not done properly yet. So, based on this situation and looking at all the telcos, right, okay, the MCMC decided that, you know what, we can't do the same thing and expect different results. We need to do something different. So number one is, how do we ensure that we can roll out 5G quickly and more effectively? So what they proposed was to get the telcos to form a consortium.
Yeah, this was during the 2019 era. Okay.
Yeah, so there was officially announced on New Year's Day actually, 1st of January 2020. They said, okay, we're going to assign the spectrum to a consortium which consists of multiple operators. So multiple operators can gang up and create their own spectrum and bid for it. So the winner with the best business case and the best package plan for the 5G rollout will get the spectrum. And whoever owns the spectrum, you can sort this out because they're all private firms. So they can apply. They can assign their own vendors to roll out the network, and there's no duplication. So instead of the old way of Maxis has their own tower, Celcom has their own tower. So everyone, let's pool the resources, create one single network, and everyone can tap into it.
Yep. So people with so let's say if TM is a fiber expert and I don't think any other operator in Malaysia is a fiber expert lah. So let's say TM is fiber expert, and then fiber is important, is crucial in the deployment of 5G. So the consortium would have TM as the fiber expert.
Yep.
And then let's say Celcom has the most towers. And then, so the consortium would have Celcom. So TM and Celcom will team up. And then let's say, DG has the most subscriber, for example, right? Okay, we're going to team up. And then they're going to develop like a business plan and then show to the government. Okay, government, we have the subscriber base. We have the infrastructure in terms of towers. And we have infrastructure in terms of fiber. And we are the best to deploy.
Yeah.
And, I can see how that can be transparent. And I can see how that helps because these are all driven by private sectors. And that gives the private sector a motivation to deliver the best services, because we, the paying customers, will be the ones that are going to make a lot of noise, and we're going to make a lot of noise to the operator. And if the operator or the consortium does not make any action, we can report to the MCMC. And we know, and we've documented this a lot, MCMC does take action on errant telcos. They do put down hefty fines and they do move quickly. I mean, if they want to enforce, they can. But with an SPV, okay, we haven't spoken about SPV.
Yeah.
All right, so they can. So hold on to that thought. And then after that,
and during the MyDigital announcement, the Prime Minister announced that we're going to launch full 5G services by Q4 2021, end of this year, 10 more months ago. And how is it going to be done? So the spectrum and the task of rolling out the infrastructure is going to be given to an SPV, a special purpose vehicle of the government. So it's a government entity that's under the purview of the Ministry of Finance. So in a way, the government is getting their hands into the telco business. And what happens is that the spectrum and the infrastructure was given to the SPV, and the SPV will sell the access and capacity to the telcos through the wholesale agreement. So in a way, all telcos will be acting like MVNOs.
I don't know, man. This I don't know whatever you want to call it, right? But this sounds like a monopoly to me. Like the government, okay, spectrum is a limited resource. And yes, I can understand why the government needs to like really take care and manage the spectrum properly, and they should give the spectrum to the people that deserve it, so that the people that have the spectrum can make the most out of it. Then we come back to companies that got spectrum but don't do anything about it.
Correct.
So it's like, what's going on? Okay, fine, that's another thing. Then we have this thing called this SPV. So their goal is to deploy the 5G network wholesale.
Yep.
And then operators are going to rent from the SPV.
Yes.
To deploy 5G. So essentially, operators do not own the 5G network, but they deploy the 5G service.
Yes.
And competition is via pricing and I don't know what
Bundling,
else.
yeah.
Services and experience, I guess. But if the experience is the same, what do operators have? What is the motivation for operators to sell 5G? Because like everybody's selling 5G.
It's going to be like cheap all the way down just to win customers, right?
Yeah. You look at what's going on right now. So Telekom Malaysia is running fiber, right? And yes, they opened the fiber network for other operators to come in if they want to. The only other competitor is maybe Maxis, and the more serious one is probably Time. But they don't have the funds to go all the way out like how Telecom is doing. So you look at the other operators that is riding on Telecom's network, you don't even know their fiber plans exist, because that's not the thing that's going to make the most amount of money for them. The margins are small, and if Telecom's already doing it, then that's fine. Why should I bother competing in that segment? And that's going to happen with this, I don't know, this SPV thing. Who's going to be motivated to sell more?
Yeah, and another thing, interesting you point out the fiber thing. Okay, so like fiber, right, the difference is this. So fiber, TM has the largest network in Malaysia. And then because of HSBB, which is partly subsidized by the government, other operators can tap into it. But if the operators think that I can actually go to other areas, they're free to do so. So despite what people say that TM is a monopoly, it's not.
It's not, yeah.
Because any operator can roll up their own fiber network. Maxis has their own network in certain areas. Celcom has their own network in Sabah. Time also has their own network, which they don't share. And then,
TNB has their own network.
yeah, TNB has their own network, so
Yeah.
they are free to do that.
Yeah.
But for this 5G arrangement, they can't because only the SPV has the right for the 5G.
Because it is not a matter of, okay, I want to pull fiber from here to here, I just gali the jalan, get the permit. The problem is it is physically impossible because any operator that wants to roll out 5G can't do it because they do not have the physical spectrum to do so.
Yeah. So like for example, if let's say one operator said, you know what, this SPV network is crap. I want to have my own network.
Yep.
I can't do that because it's only one entity that's allowed to do so.
Okay, then we come to this point. Okay, so let's say the government still proceeds with this, and let's say the operators agree to do this, and let's say the 5G services are available by the end of this year, and it turns out crap. Me as a user, who do I complain?
Okay, number one, you complain to MCMC. Okay, this operator is giving me crap service. And the operator, of course, will say, that's not my fault. I'm just the virtual mobile operator. So I'll complain, okay, it's a SPV that's giving me crap service. There's issues with the network infrastructure. And then the MCMC, by right, have to take action against the SPV.
Yeah.
So the thing is, a government agency trying to punish a government agency. So imagine this lah. If let's say they fall behind the quality of service and they're going to fine the SPV like $5 million and all that. You know that $5 million is coming from whose pockets?
So the SPV is a government entity. Is driven by taxpayers' money.
Yeah, public
15
funded.
billion is going to come from our pockets, the rakyat's pockets, right?
That's not clear even.
So they didn't even elaborate on that. They just put, okay, we're going to spend 15 billion ringgit in the next 10 years for specifically for 5G or for MyDigital.
For 5G only.
And get this, right? Previous budget for 5G deployment during the NFCP 2 time was what, half of this?
It's not the budget, it's the how much it costs. They basically the
estimated cost.
Estimated cost to roll out 5G in Malaysia is about 7 to 8 billion ringgit.
So now the government is saying, oh, actually you guys need
15 billion.
15 billion. And by the way, you're running it with a government agency.
Yeah,
shouldn't it be cheaper if you're running it with a government agency?
I don't know. Okay, in terms of how cheap it is, it all depends because at the end of the day, it's going to be a wholesale agreement. So wholesale agreement is basically how much you rent for the telcos, how much is it going to cost the telcos to rent access from the SPV. That we also don't know what's the pricing. But MCMC said that, they have policies and regulatory in place to make sure that the pricing is fair, is equal to all players, and then it's going to be affordable. But there's no guarantees, right? The way I see it.
Okay, so Alex attended the briefing. You heard the explanation from MCMC themselves.
Yeah.
You see their faces, you hear their voices. Now you're telling the story, right? Do you believe what they say?
Basically, they can't answer much because they said, okay, we're going to assign the spectrum to this SPV, and then how they're going to run, I don't know. You got to ask the SPV guys.
Ask the MOE. MOF.
Yeah.
And MOF has not made any announcements or whatever.
I have a feeling that they are equally as shocked as us. Like, what? We are going to build a network? I got a feeling that's the case.
Okay.
Because they've been very silent.
Okay, so we now we come back to who's gonna if the problem sucks, if the network sucks, who are we going to blame? So like say we blame the operator say no, talk to the SPV say like I don't know, go talk to that operator. It just opens up like a route for the blame game. And then who's accountable? Who's motivated to sell? What is going to happen to 5G?
Yep, and also like why is the government getting into a telco business? Why you want to get involved in this thing? Is it a good idea in the first place?
So a lot of people don't seem to think that this is a good idea, right?
Yep.
Can you pull out some excerpts from what the analysts have said about this?
So once Fitch they issue like a commentary on the issue, they foresee that this will be like a similar situation like Australia's national broadband network. So similarly, it's a government-driven initiative that the government is going to own and build the network to provide fiber broadband access, and it's a long-term plan. And because Australia, they have changed a lot of prime ministers, I think far more than us back then. So there's a lot of change to the plan. So initially it's supposed to be like fiber to the home, and then it gets scaled down with mix and match of all technologies, and it has budget overruns. The experience is crap, and eventually it's like not worth it. So why is Malaysia want to do something similar?
Yeah, so we've seen the case study on the Fitch thing. The backstory of that is Australia is so big and it's so under fiberized. The intent was good. The government decided like, okay, you know what? To bring the country to the future, to bring the country to the next level, we need to fiberize the nation. We need to fiberize the population, not the nation, because a lot of parts of Australia just don't have people. So they said, okay, we're going to fiber the country 100%, right? And then after that, ding dong, ding dong, dong, ding dong, ding.
Got scaled down from like fiber to the home, become like fiber to the curb, and then I don't know what's.
It got scaled down and it was over budget. Okay, so there are two sides of this. Let's be fair, right? The government, Malaysia's government, can learn from all the mistakes that the Australian government has made. Okay, that's one. Or number two is, why not do like what the rest of the world have done in terms of 5G deployment? Open tender, ask a request for proposal from the industry, choose the best player or the best group of players and deploy.
For that note, they did explain the why that's not a recommended step, because I think it also falls back to the previous administration's 5G task force report. Because number one is that they find that the capex from telcos are not increasing; they're actually going down. They're spending less on network. So if based on this rate, right, I don't think we'll be able to have a proper quality 5G network. So that's the reason why they propose to have a single entity through a consortium. So at least there's no repetition of network, and then it's more efficient. It can bring the price down. And because there's no auction, right?
Yep.
There's no the cost will be much lower, and that cost savings in theory supposed to be passed to consumers. So the difference of that is that previously the government proposed to have a consortium of private companies, but now it is government driven. So that's the biggest difference.
Okay, so to that point, right? Why can't the government do it like how they did it with fiber, right? It's a private-public collaboration.
Yep.
So let's say it takes the low amount, 7B, right, to deploy 5G in Malaysia. Government is looking at 15 billion now. Why can't they just take some of that money and give it back to the private sector? And okay, here's some money, here's some funds, make it happen. Why can't they incentivize the rollout? If they cannot put direct funds, why can't they incentivize it by tax breaks? So let's say if this consortium can deploy within X amount of time, they pay zero tax on 5G services for the next 5 years. That's a huge incentive for companies to get people to move to 5G services. Like, okay, if all my people are on, my subscribers are on 4G, I want to get them on 5G as soon as possible so that I save millions on tax.
Yep. And
has anybody asked that question?
Well, they say ask the SPV. Anyway, the thing is, yeah, you're absolutely right, because at least at the end of the day, that's still privately driven.
Yes.
So like for example, in Malaysia, HBB is done by TM, right? So they're answerable to the not taxpayer, they're answerable to their shareholders. Like you need to be profitable, right? So you need to make sure that you deliver on track to get the government subsidy. So just one motivation to hit the targets that's set by government, and number two is make sure it's profitable. But for in this case, right? Where's the motivation?
Yeah, so who's responsible? Who's to blame? And okay, so back to Australia, right? So the intent was to fiberize the population of Australia to bring them to the next level, right? Because we know there have been like well documented studies to say that every increase in speed or access to the internet will lead to increase in the GDP.
Exactly.
Internet will make the country richer, right?
Yep.
That's proven. We're not contesting that. The problem is right now, so back to Australia, what happened was because it is a government initiated and government funded project and it's a government owned and everything is by the government, the victims are us.
Yep. And then also
the people.
Yeah, and then also going back to the 5G, right? So it looks nice, right? Okay, MyDigital, we're going to launch 5G services by end of this year. But there's no targets right now. I asked MC, there's no targets. Like, for example, in Singapore, they have a target of hitting 50% 5G coverage by the end of 2022 and 100% coverage by 2025. There's none of that. So when I ask MCMC, they say, oh, it's supply-driven. But what's supply-driven? Like, okay, for me, my greatest fear is that will this end up like a JKR?
I don't know, man. Okay, so if it's supply-driven, but the supply is owned by the government and the people that are supposed to sell the supply is the telco, the question is, who is motivated to do this?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about pricing. If it's priced too high, who wants it? And if it's priced too high but the service is terrible, then who wants it? And then we talk about the coverage, right? before 5G can even begin, they need to decommission 3G. So is the SPV looking at the decommissioning? No, the telcos are looking into that. But who's pushing the telcos to do that? Is that in the MyDigital plan? Is MCMC looking at that?
Well, during the MCMC briefing, so essentially with the SPV, right, the MCMC is telling the telcos, you don't need to worry about 5G rollout at all. So let the government take care of that. You focus on hitting your JENDELA targets, which, by the way, is to increase the 4G coverage and service by pushing the coverage to 96.9% by
of the population
by 2022. So focus on fiberizing your towers and increase your 4G coverage. That's what they're telling telcos. And at the same time, decommission your 3G services by end of this year. So end of this year, two things are happening.
No 3G?
No 3G and kicking off 5G. Before we can shut down 3G, right, there's two things we need to address. Number one, the users. As of, I think, September last year, the MCMC says there are 1.7 million users who are still using 3G devices. And they're confident that, this shouldn't be an issue because they say that telcos have been, they have a good past track record of migrating people from 2G to 3G devices in a short time. So they are confident that this can be done. The second problem is, all areas that's currently covered only in 3G will be able to be covered by 4G by the end of this year. That's the biggest question because it's switch off 3G, right? Let's imagine some poor kid in the middle of an interior town who only has 3G access.
Suddenly no access at all.
2G. You only get like 2G. That's going to be crap. And the problem is that the government has plans to address these rural area issues. So back in the NFCP, there's NFCP 1 and NFCP 2. So NFCP 1 is like one section. So that's the reason why Viviana can get 4G right now. So thankfully, the current administration has agreed to prioritize NFCP 1.
It's because of the video lah.
So, okay, NFCP has 1. NFCP 2 is supposed to cover more areas, especially in Sabah and Sarawak, the interior towns. And that was supposed to kick off in 2020. And because of change administration, that project wasn't running at all. It was stalled.
Yeah.
And only recently, after the launch of JENDELA, that NFCP2 scope was taken over. And until now, it's not even running because it's still under RFP process, request for proposal. And we have 10 months to go. So even with that proposal approved, like say middle of this year, right?
Yep.
They only have a few more months to roll out the new towers in these areas.
Yep.
So I think it's too ambitious and it's too rushed to shut down 3G by the end of this year.
I think it smells like it smells like election. I think all of this is being rushed to
build a feel good moment, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I feel that is the case. And I also feel that the SPV is only an excuse because I feel that the government has already decided on what they are planning to do with the 5G thing, and they've already decided on who they're going to work with.
Yeah, especially when Saifuddin, I think, was quoted by Bloomberg. He said this. He was reported by Bloomberg. He said this: "We want to be among the first ASEAN member states to roll out 5G deployment and not just limit ourselves to 5G test labs." And he said this. It's very important for investments, and this way companies like Huawei will play a very significant role.
Why single out Huawei?
Yeah, the thing is, you are the ministry, right? You don't decide which vendor to work for.
Yeah, you don't single out a company unless there is an agenda.
Because normally it's like MCMC as a regulatory. As a government and a regulatory, you set targets. I give you a spectrum. I want you to deliver this percentage by when.
Who you work with, I don't care.
I don't care. Yeah,
just make it happen.
Yeah. Why you mention it right now? It's a bit too premature.
Yeah. So it's frustrating. I think we've taken like 2 steps back when it comes to 5G deployment. We were in 2019 and the early part of 2020, we were ahead or on par with at least on par with Singapore when it comes to 5G deployment. Now with all this politicking and all this thing that's going on, and ministers, I don't know what they're doing. We're kind of like, I think, behind, like way behind.
Yeah, Philippines has launched a 5G network. Vietnam has launched a 5G network.
Publicly available 5G network.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's about it. I mean, okay, so let's recap. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Or I think we've covered pretty much everything.
Another thing that's a bit sidetracked but still related to MyDigital is that what's interesting in the report is that the government aims to have the most submarine-capable landings in Southeast Asia by 2025. Means more than Singapore.
Yeah.
And how you're going to achieve that is not mentioned. basically we're going to have more cable landings by 2025, and it's going to be spearheaded by the Ministry of Communication and Multimedia.
And they have no indication that this is going to positive turn, because the cabotage issue has still not been resolved.
Correct. So here's the thing: the governments are aware that the tech companies have been complaining about the cabotage issue. So just to recap, cabotage is basically the right to operate in Malaysian waters. But the issue right now is that most of the tech giants, they require a DP2 vessel, a specific vessel to carry out these jobs, and Malaysia doesn't have it. So the previous government had offered an exemption. So if you want to fix cables, you're exempted from this cabotage thing, and you can get foreign ships to come repair the cables, because the tech giants will complain that the current process with the cabotage is too slow. It takes 27 days to repair a submarine cable. That's unacceptable. If I'm going to invest fiber in the country, I've got to make sure that I can maintain the cables. If anything happens, I can fix it as soon as possible. So that's not very favorable to the tech giants. And they've been complaining to the current Ministry of Transport. Nothing. He's not budging. He even said that, that these requests some of them are illogical. And he insists that DP1 ships are good enough because our waters are very shallow. But the tech giants are not buying it.
Yeah, because if he believes that the DP1 ships are good enough, then he should talk to the tech giants to say that, okay, you know what, you don't need DP2s. But obviously the tech giants like Google, YouTube, Facebook, whatever, they need the DP2 ships for a reason. It's not because the depth of the ocean, it's because the condition of the sea. The DP2 allows the ship to stay in position better because of accuracy.
And also insurance purposes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the key thing, for insurance purposes. So that issue is not resolved, and yet we want to have the most submarine cable landings by 2025. Like, I don't see how this is going to work.
Yeah, so for me, I think this is just lip service. I don't know what's going on. The plan is not concrete. I will believe it when I see it. I will be convinced when I use it. So we'll call them out. We'll wait for the end of this year, right? For the first publicly available 5G network in Malaysia.
Hopefully, because until now, Ministry of Finance hasn't said anything about SPV.
And this is in between some sort of like an election maybe happening in September or sometime around this year, maybe. And that is hoping that the current government will still be in power.
Yeah, if they change the government, then this whole thing might be scrapped. I don't know what's going to happen
next. It's going to be
man.
scrapped for sure, man.
Yeah,
it's going to be scrapped for sure. So to recap, MyDigital, I think it's fair for us to say that the intent is wonderful. And like I said in my previous, in the previous episode of Let's Talk About, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So it's a matter of execution, and from what we've seen and what the government has said and what Alex have heard and asked from the government, the execution has a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah, a lot of questionable decisions, and yeah.
So will Malaysia be the leader when it comes to 5G deployment in the next 5 to 10 years? What do you think, Alex?
I have no idea, man. Seriously, but there's a lot of concerns going on right now, and I'm just not comfortable that a government entity, like, I don't think a government should be involved in the telecommunications business. That's my take.
So and I agree. While the government focuses, one of the aspects of MyDigital is a complete and full array of cloud services in Malaysia and expanding their cloud capabilities, my head is shrouded in a metaphorical cloud, because I am not confident that this plan will be perfect. Well, not perfect, but will be able to prove itself come the end of this year. Looking at what's going on right now and looking at how it's being deployed and looking at what the people responsible are responding to in terms of the questions that we ask them. Okay, so what can we do about it? At the end of the day, guys, you need to strike the conversation. You need to talk to the people that are responsible to tell them what's going on with 5G, so that, it's not just a faster phone. Don't think of 5G like that. It is a tool that's going to enable better life for all of us in Malaysia. So we need to hold the people who are in government more accountable to what's going on. Pay attention to the issues. At least listen to this podcast and get yourself up to speed so that you know what's going on. And if you strike a conversation, you know what to talk about. All right? So I hope we've left you guys more informed than than when you guys came to the show. I hope you like it. And I hope you enjoyed watching today's episode of Let's Talk About. I just want to take the opportunity to remind everybody that we are available on podcasts. So just look for Sorry Chinchao Let's Talk About, and we are available on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Just search for us there. If you're listening to us on podcast, be sure to give us a 5-star rating and a good review, because that gets us noticed by more people, and that helps the show a lot. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks very much for watching. Give us a thumbs up if you like the show. Drop a suggestion in the comment section of what you want us to talk about in the future, and drop a comment on how we can improve the show. We really appreciate that. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, sorrychinchao.com. And that's pretty much it. This is me, Amin.
And this is Alex.
Thanks very much for watching, guys. Stay safe and catch you guys later. Bye.
Bye.